Well, hello everybody. For those of you who are watching the recording, there's a couple of people watching us live, I see. My name's Travis Allison from CampHacker.org, and I'm super excited to have an old Camp Hacker friend on the interview show today, Jenn Selke. Hey Jen, how's it going?
Great. It's going great. Thanks for having me on. I really love, checking out this new technology, and I haven't used Spreecast before, so it's exciting just to do that.
Yeah, well, it's exactly. This is our first time using Spreecast too. We're searching around for the right technology for this show. So thanks for being part of the experiment. I figured if anybody could handle a technological experiment, it was you.
Yeah, so at least we're not doing like a TriCaster or anything too crazy.
That's my hope someday, but no, we're not getting too crazy. Not too crazy at all. So, Jen, I wanted to have you on to talk about a number of different things. I wanted to talk about your presentation at the ACA National Conference, but and sort of your intersection of your camp work and your school work and how that fits into what you do. But I wonder if we could just start with um, how you got involved in summer camp in the first place.
Yeah, well, I actually never went to camp. I'm one of those camp directors that didn't go to camp as a kid.
Yeah,
I did a lot of Little League and played softball through college.
yeah,
And after college, got married, and my husband, before I met him, was actually enlisted in the Air Force. And so right after we got married, we were deployed to England. And at the time, the jobs were either to work at the commissary
nice.
or the youth center. And so then the youth center became little kids or older kids. So I went in for the interview, and it was the person that was interviewing me was a British national who was getting ready for the Little League season and had ordered all the whistles for the umpires.
Right.
And that's really, they don't have whistles. So I was hired pretty much on the spot for minimum wage. And that was running after school programming that rolled into summer camp. And then you'd have the same kids in after school programming. And I did that for 3 years before I came to Berkeley for my doctoral degree. And what are you going to do? But first summer, that I was here, look for a job working at camp. And I'm actually at the camp that I started at my first summer in Berkeley.
That's
Actually,
awesome.
almost in pretty much the same job. So I haven't really moved up, in the last, I don't know, 18 years here, got a PhD, but I'm pretty much doing the same thing.
Right, right, right. Well, I mean, you balance, as I say, school and work. School, your work as a psychologist at school with being a camp director. And how do you get time to do the camp stuff to get ready for the summer with working full time and another job?
Yeah, well, I actually work full time for camp now.
Okay, okay,
And a number of years, the university, University of California had incentives to get people to take time off but still keep their full benefits. So for a couple of years, I reduced my time in the off season to like 50% or 75%. And then I picked up a 40% job at a public school. And that was mostly to get my hours to get my license.
right.
So I only did that, I don't know, it was probably 8 years or 7 years where I kind of did two things at once. So I've always been sort of full time at camp, and then this was just sort of an extra thing. I mean, we all work more than 40 hours a week, let's face it. So I just picked up an official job to do that.
Right,
So I also, now that I have my license, I have a private practice, and I only work 3 hours a week in a private practice
right,
as a psychologist, and I'm not working in the schools right now as a school psychologist. So
right.
that really relieved a lot. I'm working on a book on supervising millennials, which is a lot
Yeah,
of stuff for what we do at camp. So, and I also am a supervisor in the doctoral program at UC Berkeley. So I'm on the faculty there, but a lot of it's supervising students rather than teaching.
yeah,
So this
yeah.
is my first year that I actually have a lot more time to work with, work on camp, although, it all absorbs. I'm teaching classes online and social media. Um, so I think I just have a certain number of hours per day that I'm going to fill with something.
Right.
And as soon as I drop one, something just, filled in to
Yeah.
ease into that space.
Awesome. Do your staff find you intimidating that you're a doctor of psychology?
I don't think they find me intimidating for that reason. I think of them just they find me naturally intimidating. Unfortunately, I think people that are busy and task oriented, that pushes out the side of being relationship oriented when you're more focused on tasks.
Right.
And that can make people feel secondary because I'm much more about getting things done than about finding out like how your weekend was. So I actually teaching social skills groups has been great because I have a social script now in my head that on Monday you say, "How was your weekend?"
Yeah.
And you can actually even say that on Tuesday. But then the important thing that most people forget is then you wait for them to answer. Then you go and do what you want to do. So
Yes.
then I kind of, Wednesday I kind of get tripped up, but Thursday and Friday I use what are you doing this weekend and the
Yeah.
same thing. So yeah, it's all about the social scripts for the task oriented director.
Right. All right. And is that something you teach for your task-oriented staff members too?
Yeah, I teach at training so people can learn more about me. I find it helps them to sort of understand that while I appear busy, I never want to be too busy for them.
Right.
And while I have an ask three before me sort of, policy of trying to help them go to other people besides me,
Yeah.
that the reason I run camp is really for the staff. Some people they are directors run camp for different reasons and have different motivations. And for me, it's really to support and teach this next generation of workers. And so I never want to be too busy for them. And I have to sort of tell them, like, I will appear busy and it is not what I intend to do. And I try not to. I need help doing that. I mean, I want to change.
Right.
And I have to work on that. But I more educate them on sort of what they're going to look see in me and what that means and sort of how I, to approach me.
Right. All right. I think one of the nice things. It sounds a little well. It sounds, and doesn't surprise me, but it sounds like you and I deal with camp and work a lot the same way. And nice thing for us, co-directing with my wife Beth, is that she is very much people first, and she's really sensitive to those kinds of things. So she was the one providing me with the scripts. She's like,
Oh,
really, in
good.
that situation, you should start with this maybe instead of, hi, do this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no, that is really, and that goes into like email, it goes into everything. Like some of the stuff that I say is just so, just right to the point and can be harsh.
all right, all right.
Yeah, my
Well,
husband's a lot softer, and that unfortunately he doesn't work at camp. So I really try to hire people
yes,
around me that do that because nobody would like a camp staff, administrative staff of like just me. So
right,
I really work on balancing myself out.
yeah. So, tell me a bit about the camp. How many staff do you have?
Let's see, about 130.
Yeah.
In I would say 40% are in our high school training program.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a large program that starts with kids that are finishing ninth grade and goes through finishing 12th grade who volunteer as well as get paid to work at
Right.
camp in sort of a graduated leadership program.
Cool.
So we actually have a large, I had about 10% of my staff last year from Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
Berkeley is a mecca for the Irish in the summer,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. They come in droves, and they're very qualified and extremely hard workers.
Yep.
So, we don't really ever have a staff shortage. I can really start camp and hire 15 people,
Yeah.
on the weekend before it starts.
So the camp itself, it's on Berkeley campus.
Yeah, it's at UC Berkeley.
Right.
I'm part of the rec sports department.
Yeah.
We are located on campus under the auspices of the University of California.
Right. Cool. And what activities are there?
The camp that I run is for kids ages 7 to 13, and we do about 20 to 25 different activities. So
Yeah.
the kids customize their schedule when they sign up and they pick their top 10. And before camp begins, somebody sorts them all out into who needs to be with which friend and who can't do swimming at 9 and gets them a schedule, and that's their schedule for 2 weeks. And so they'll do everything from, water polo to lacrosse, archery, rugby, card games has been popular.
Yeah.
It's a big range of stuff they don't, there's soccer, there's your typical soccer, baseball, hip hop, and then there's, things like rugby and lacrosse that they might not get to try other
Right.
places. And then we also have a large skateboard camp that is a separate camp, but it's still within our facility. So I supervise that as well. We'll have about 30 kids a day doing skateboard camp, and it's a very structured curriculum that we've written that's kind of like a WSI meets snowboarding, sort of swim instructor, swim curriculum,
Yep.
matched with snowboarding, where it's very leveled and, kids are moving through different levels.
And they're building on their skills all the time.
Yeah, I mean, kids come in, they want to ollie, like they're in for a shock. It's like the kids that think it's rec swim when you're doing swim
Yeah.
lessons.
uh,
They get a little disappointed.
right. Right. But I bet they go away with a lot more talent than what they came in with.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think once the kids realize what they're learning, they're really happy with it.
Yeah. Awesome. Jenn, one of the reasons that that I asked you to come on is I wanted to hear from you about you are one of my sources for interesting technology to help me do my job. And I love the presentation that you did for National. And I wonder if you can just take us through some of the things that you had pointed out about um, the tools that you use to make your job easier.
Yeah, well, at ACA National, one of the things I talked about was just different pieces of technology that I use. And it's a presentation that I've done quite a while, so I keep adding things that companies that have closed and,
Right.
take things away. And so it just kept getting longer. I think it was up to like 70 slides when I started. And then when I realized I had an hour, I was like, okay, a minute a slide, let's go. And so, some of the things, at least this time of year, I think camp directors really have to think about finding a capture device for their tasks.
Yep.
And it's really about finding what works for them. So there are a number, if they have a mobile device or they want something that's simple like Pocket Mod, which is a paper, you can go to Pocket Mod, I think it's pocketmod.com, and you could print out sort of a piece of paper and that it's like an origami and it folds into a little booklet. And
Yep.
you can pick like a to-do list, a calendar, and so it doesn't have to be high tech, but you need something that you're capturing your to-do things on. And so I personally like Toodle-Do.
Yes.
Things, Remember the Milk, I don't know if you have a favorite. It's kind of just whatever fits your brain style. So To-Do app is critical, and managing repeating tasks is really useful. So whatever that is, you can try a bunch out, but that's something that you can't live without. The other thing, I know everybody's talked about Dropbox, but for us, it's huge in utilizing a lot of the features with that, um, especially with the site like Text Expander. So Text Expander allows you to create shortcuts and put any type of text behind the shortcuts. So this time of year, hiring 130 staff, my first one is thank you for your application,
Yes.
answer these 5 questions or fill out this form. And you do that like 250 times, and so when you set those snippets up in Text Expander, I can type like 2 or 3 keys as a shortcut and it drops whatever bit of text I have. So whether it's a subject line or an email address or a web address, I have hundreds of snippets set up. And so every year what that means is when it's time to start the process all over again, all I need to do is go through my snippets and change the dates and make sure it all fits.
Yep.
But if you set them up and sort of, I think using Text Expander, and that's available on the Mac, and I know the PC, it's not really the PC version, it's the people that work on a similar program for the PC is called Breevy, Breevy,
Yep.
and they actually use the same code as Text Expander, and the engineers for both programs work together.
Right.
So that's who Text Expander recommends if you're on a PC. It doesn't look as pretty, but I think it does the same job.
So I use Text Expander, and while we were talking, I was checking my stats to see how much time I'd saved using Text Expander. And I just reinstalled my operating system 3 weeks ago. So I just reinstalled Text Expander, and in that 3 weeks, I've saved almost 4 hours of work time with the snippets that I've used. But can you explain sort of what you mean by the shortcuts? Like give us an example.
Yeah, so if I have to type anything more than 3 times, I'm going to put a snippet behind it. And for me, kind of relating back to the fuzzy part of being a camp director, when I'm typing an email, I need to remember to say, thank you for your question and considering our camps, right? So
Yes.
my social scripts now can translate into Text Expander.
Right.
So I'll put that at the front, answer the question, and then please let me know if you have any more questions. And I put that at the bottom. And I also use, so those are two snippets right there that I would use every time I'm responding to an email. And then I put all of my signatures in Text Expander as well. So on, on Google, or if you use Gmail, you can have signatures and so forth in there. But sometimes I'm using one signature if it's somebody I know all the time and I don't need to give them all my links versus, so I just have a bunch of signatures set up in there as well.
Right.
I also use it for, web addresses if I know I'm typing or filling out a lot of forms online um, that I need that information for. Like for a camp, we do a lot of uploading with YouTube videos. And so you have to type the description, the title, the tags. So
Right.
putting all that in Text Expander means when I have to upload a video, I don't have to think about what my description is. I can just add to that stub.
Right.
So I have a lot of like, you've been hired and here's the email, and you're in the second phase, here's the email, and you haven't been hired and, here's the email. All those things are just, if I realize like I'm going to need to write this again, or I realize I need to write it again, I'll go to that email where I know I just wrote it and I'll dig it out
Yeah.
and make it a snippet.
Copy and
And
paste.
then I think the real trick is to think of your nomenclature ahead of time. So if you're going to put a lot of email addresses in there or websites, I'll use EM, and then, if it's a different project I'm working on, EMS for that project or EMW for the W project. So then I can type web and then W, and that's going to be the website for the W project. So if you kind of think of email address and then a code, or I have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of interview questions, returning staff, new staff, if I know there's some hierarchy, if I make my codes that way, it not only makes it easier when I'm putting them in, but when I'm going through them the following year to figure out what I need to change, it makes a little bit of sense of like what those were.
Right. So, and it gives you a base to start with, and it just makes it easier. So you're typing in 4 or 5 characters, and you might get, that might just pop up 2 paragraphs worth of text.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, 1,000 words, it
Right.
can be a lot.
Right.
It can be sometimes, and it does also, it does HTML if you need HTML shortcuts. It does spell. There's like so many things on the back end that it does.
Yeah.
It'll automatically correct words that you spell wrong. There's little, you can actually download additional features. I don't know if you've downloaded any of those. You
Yeah,
can
I haven't
download
really
additional
used them because I
features.
have trouble remembering all of what my shortcuts are for all of them. So I'm just trying to slowly expand the vocabulary of that. So those who, some of us are going to, some people are going to be listening to this and thinking we're out of our minds. But if you're listening, so I use, people ask for my phone number and emails all the time. So I type
Yeah.
in PHN space and it expands the 10-digit phone number. Or
Yeah.
same as Jen, I have at least four emails. And so I have a code that says I need an email and I need this particular email. I type in 5 letters total and it pops up that whole expanded 10 or 12 letter email, 14 letter email. That's an awesome one.
Yeah. And I use, I don't know if you've ever watched any of Don McAllister's stuff. He
Yeah.
does screencasts online. He's a really great guy and taught me how to use forms. And
Yes.
so you can actually, sometimes I'll be, we have a social skills camp and we don't have a lot of kids in it. So I'm often writing an email saying, "Dear parent, Johnny has been accepted into camp." So I have this email snippet, but if I create a form, I can put Johnny in once and it'll drop that kid's name in multiple times in the
Right.
email.
Right.
So you can use a little form. And then you can also embed snippets within snippets. So I always have a snippet for the camp dates because everybody's, the staff, parents, everybody needs to know as soon as those dates are set, you're putting those dates everywhere. Facebook, all these dates, you're always needing them. And so you can actually, and those dates are often in another snippet where I'm sending, you want to work at camp, here are the dates. So you can actually embed a snippet within a snippet.
Right.
So I only have to change the dates in one place and it's going to pull it on all those other snippets.
Right. That's awesome.
Kind of higher level stuff, but yeah. Don McAllister has some videos that are available for free at Screencast Online
Yep.
that I think the Text Expander one is free. And then I don't know if he did the one for 1Password, but that's another one that's really great to use in terms of keeping track of your passwords. But I've also started to use it more. They have a feature where you fill out your contact information.
Yeah.
And then whenever you need to sign up for a web form, you hit that and it dumps it all in. And if you're signing up for all these free webinars, I'm like just now addicted to that contact feature.
Yeah. Yeah, I use that all the time. So I have a contact information for my personal information, for my consulting, and for my photography. So it just dumps it in a little bit different every time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I never really did it enough to need it, but I just started using it and I'm like, I don't know how I live without this feature.
So 1Password would be another thing that's in your presentation. I'm
Yeah,
checking
I
the
do like
screen to see.
1Password. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially because these things integrate with Dropbox and also integrate with mobile. So I can
Right.
use Text Expander on my phone. Now, it's not like super efficient than as it is on my computer, but
Right.
there are times when you're on your mobile device and I need to send that 1,000-word email to somebody, and I can really go into Text Expander and grab it, and it's there. So that interface with Dropbox is really useful, and 1Password does the same thing, where then it's available on your phone. Um, and it'll help you just with password management, with even licensing management for software licenses. It's really great. That would be another thing I recommend. Also, on the mobile device, I don't know if it's available on Android, but I've been using TurboScan,
Right.
which is a program that, often, I'm trying to really eliminate paper from my life.
Yeah.
It's just a nuisance to me now. And which then I have this problem now of all these file folders. Like I think we're going to have a world full of like Pendaflex hanging file folders
Yeah.
because now I'm scanning everything. So I got a Neat Desk and at Macworld a year ago, and it's just a really fast scanner. It does two
Okay.
sides. It also has a OCR, so it'll take my receipts and recognize the text and put it in a database. So
Yeah.
it made scanning in like my mileage receipts a no-brainer. But as I'm like scanning everything, you realize there's times now when people want to hand you paper. I went to a training at UC Berkeley and they gave me a paper handout, and I was like, "What? Where am I going to put this?" So on my phone, I can use TurboScan and take a picture of it, and it turns it into a PDF, and you can mail it to yourself.
Right.
And it's great. It's really great. So that's one way of getting, if you don't have a scanner or you're just out mobile and you're like, I'm not taking that with me.
Right.
That can be a great device. The other thing I just started using recently, I don't know if you use it, maybe you can chime in, is If This Then That.
Yeah, I started. I ended up turning a lot of it off because I just grabbed some standard ones from the site. But I'll let you
Yeah.
explain what it is before I get too far along my journey on if this
Yeah, so
then that.
it creates a bit of code that does sort of a couple steps for you. So one thing that's useful is downloading photos where you're tagged in Facebook. Like, people post a photo of you, you might really like it, and yet you don't have to go and keep downloading it, and it'll put it in your Dropbox. Or, archiving your tweets from Twitter might be something that you want to do. I don't really need it. It'll do things like tell me the weather every morning. I don't really need that. It was more for things that I really didn't have a way to handle that. So those were a couple of the things that I found useful, and you can kind of write your own. It interfaces with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It'll pull your Instagram photos. It kind of interfaces all these things together, and a lot of them I didn't need. I mean, if it's on Instagram, it's likely already been on my cell phone. So I
Right.
don't really need it to do anything with it. But, it's something just to manipulate your world a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
What did you set up? What did you use?
Oh, as I say, I've turned most of it off. I just grabbed some standard ones that were there, which was look at Gizmodo and send me an email with all of the iPhone apps that they've reviewed this week.
Yeah.
The one I'd love to get that I sort of gave up on it and need to go back to it is I'd love to find the free app of the day from Lifehacker and have that sent to my email
Oh,
because I
yeah,
only see
that's
it once in a while and there's always great apps on Lifehacker that are free for just a short period of time and you need to know it that day.
Yeah, I think the other one that would be good is I get Amazon. I've ditched my Netflix.
Yeah.
I used to be a cord cutter. I don't know what you are when you're a Netflix cutter. Um, because I had Amazon Prime and I was just, really tired of Netflix.
Yeah.
And so I subscribed to the Amazon the video Twitter account I get sent to my phone, and they often do like 99-cent sales on first run, first run streaming movies.
Yep.
So instead of paying $3.99, you can actually get it for 99 cents, and you don't have to watch it right when you get it. You have like 30 days to watch it. So
Right.
it's good to kind of watch for those and then load it into your cart for the weekend.
Yeah.
Although I'm finding I have a few more stacked up right now. Spring's not a good time to watch movies for
No.
summer camp directors.
No.
Yeah.
Which just takes you back to the old Netflix problem of having the DVDs sitting around for months and not watching
I
it.
know.
And
That
not
would make
sending
me
them back.
crazy. I know. I didn't even watch the DVDs toward the end, but I didn't want another one, so I just would hang on to them.
Right. Yeah.
I felt
Awesome.
so bad.
Cool. What else have we got? We got time for a couple more, John.
Yeah, the other one I'm using a lot is Wufoo, which is it feels like to me a mashup between sort of the forms you can make on Google, and
Yep.
I don't know if a lot of people know with Google Docs and Google spreadsheets, there's actually a form builder that will build you a form and it'll dump the data into a Google spreadsheet.
Yep.
And it's great, but it's got a limiting, it's limiting, but it's great for free. And so Wufoo does that, but it's very elegant and does a lot more. It's sort of like that on steroids. And then it also kind of is a mashup between sort of a bento or a file maker,
Yeah.
where you get a little of a file feature. And so what I'm using it for, and I'm collecting, we have a university staff application that everybody has to complete, and it's the University of California. They're not going to make it the prettiest, the easiest, the nicest. It's great if you're a scientist, and you want to discover the next element, but it doesn't fit if you're hiring summer camp staff. And so I have created, and I always sort of create my own extra, here's what I need from you once you jump through the first level of hoops. Like, here's the dates for camp. When can you really be here? Here's the training dates. When can you really attend? What makes for a great staff member? So I ask some questions, and I just put these in a form. And now instead of mailing my text expander snippet, I mail the snippet, but has a link to this form.
Yeah.
So I'm capturing the email address, the phone number, and now I can go in on the back end and create reports. So if I want to create a cell phone report, and then I can even have fields in there that are admin only. So I can add extra fields that only I can see, which is to me a feel of the bento FileMaker, where you have your own database with all these people, and then you can add extra data in there. So
those extra
great.
fields.
I'm like,
those
you
extra
can do whatever you want. You can just make them.
Notes you write to yourself about that person.
Right. Or it could be interview questions, where maybe I want to put in my interview questions about what they said they really wanted to teach, or what their goals were, or something that I'm going to need to refer to later.
Right.
I can put that in there.
Right.
So yeah, just completely touching, scratching the surface on what it can do. It's just beautiful looking, and it's really great. And you can use, they give you, it's a good freemium model. I think you get 10 questions in up to 3 forms, and then you get 100 people to answer them. So it's really good to try out.
Oh, that sounds great.
That's that's one of my top ones. The other thing we're doing that people might be interested in, that's not exactly a application, but I'm working with the ACA on a new blog, a new tech blog.
Yep.
And specifically, what they're finding is that the print, I don't know if you've ever written anything for the ACA print magazine, but it goes out, you turn stuff in like 8 months at least before it comes out. Like, I wrote an article, I think it came out in November, on like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and I was trying so hard to be really general, because I knew, who knew what was going to be different in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so, in talking to them at the conference, it was like, really, this would be great content, but it needs to be on a blog. It needs to be something that's happening right away. I know David Betts from Camp TV has been really good about trying to get something out when something changes on YouTube. I know they just had a video recently that talked about how the time change on YouTube related videos are going to come up based on how long people have actually watched the video.
Yep.
And so, that's huge in terms of what camps are doing. And so that would be a great blog post. So what we're going to be putting together is a list of people who would like to be guest bloggers. that, are like up. They knew, they weren't surprised on, what is it, February 29th, when, Facebook's marketing conference, Facebook pages, was announced a change of timeline. Like, that's like old news to them.
Yeah.
So that they can be like tapped when something changes, we can reach out to an expert in that area and say, wow, would you mind putting together, 500 words on this?
Right.
So to kind of keep it topical, keep it more, it's kind of what I was doing when I set up the Camp Director blog. But I really found I enjoyed setting up the blog more than I enjoyed writing. And so whenever I start writing, I don't write anything that's like under 500 words. I don't know what it is. I don't enjoy writing. I don't feel like I'm good at it. And yet I spew out like, 1,500 words. And so it takes me like 6 hours to do a blog post, and then I don't do it again for like 4 months. So to me, it's a way to really get like technology constantly changing information out to camp directors more quickly.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So I'm going to have a link. Yeah, I'm going to have a link. I'll put it on Twitter. I'll get it on the Camp Professionals section on Facebook. I'll put it on my blog. And it's just a Google form where people can enter sort of who they are, where they think they fit in. So look out for that. I have it ready to go. So I'll try to get that up by the end of today
Cool.
to look out for that. So that's, one interesting thing I thought people might like. That's, not really a tip.
No, but it is. I mean, one thing that I always default to the technological solution to things, and I don't think that that's the way necessarily for even most camp directors. And so I get myself in trouble because I go straight for the newest whatever that will do the trick, and that does not necessarily the best solution, just happens to be the newest. So I think a blog like that, if it's written for people who are interested in making just transitioning to a more technological way of looking at running summer camp without it scaring them, that's amazing. That's a great thing to be.
Yeah, and
part of.
I mean, I see at these conferences a big shift. And it's true when I go to South by Southwest and I talk with people about the millennials and about this group coming through.
Yeah.
Samsung's concerned about it, Disney, Pepsi, they're all wondering what do we do with these kids that are like on the first day ready to make significant changes in the company.
Yeah.
I think this recent stat I found from the MTV study was that 92% of millennials feel like they're a value, like a significant value to their boss and company. 92%, it's crazy. And so I think that's happening at summer camp. And I think I see it at conferences where you have, and I'm sure you see it at Tri-State, where you have this divide of people running around with their iPhones and they're on Twitter and they're, and there's this other group that isn't. And so I really think it's sort of preparing this next wave for how they're going to integrate all these pieces with what they're doing. And I think they're going to be the ones that help their boss or help their board or help their camp kind of navigate that. They're like the ambassadors, I feel like.
Yeah. That's really great. Well, Jen, I told you.
Yeah, and then the other thing.
You go ahead. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah, no, the last thing I want to say is for people that travel, they need to get a hold of TripIt. I don't know if you use it or not, but
I do.
it's amazing. I went to their breakfast at South by Southwest. They had like a really great breakfast, and I pulled myself out of bed because it's my favorite app.
Yeah.
And they actually do a lot of other additional things that are new. So if people haven't checked it out, tripit.com to organize all your travel.
Right, and it keeps it all in
That's
one
it.
easy
That's my
place.
last tip.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I will add you on TripIt then. I can't believe we're not connected there.
Yeah, I can't. Well, I'm a little hesitant. I will connect with you without a problem, but I definitely don't broadcast my travel schedule.
Fair.
I work from everywhere, so if I'm interviewing people from Hawaii, I don't know that they want to know that.
Right. All right. Awesome. Jen, thanks so much for coming on. There's so many questions. We didn't even touch on your supervising millennials presentation, which I'm actually very interested in. So maybe I'll invite you to come back. We'll bring you on the audio show when we have a little bit more space to talk about it. And we'll change the times that'll work out with your schedule to record that one in the next, before things get too crazy for you.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Awesome. Jen, how can people keep up with you and keep in touch with all the stuff you're doing?
The best is jennselke.com, and that's with 2 N's, JENNSELKE. And it'll have links to Google Plus, all the things, Facebooks, Twitters.
Right.
That's the best way. I probably tweet the most. So if people are looking for a way to follow me consistently, it's probably Twitter.
It's Twitter. Okay. Where you are at Jenn Selke.
Yep.
Well, if you're putting stuff out, can you put a link to your national presentation again, and I'll retweet it out to people that are watching this, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes when I take this video and put it on the camphacker.org website.
Great.
Awesome. Jenn, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care.
All right. Bye.